The next card that I'm making for the masculine card set for the Level 2 challenge is a birthday card, and it's going to have an international flair to it. It's also going to have a vintage flair to it. And so here's what I'll be using to make it. I have this is a larger stamp, as you can see, and I don't want it to feel too cramped. So I'm using a 5x7 Kraft paper card base. I then have a 6.5 by 4.5 card panel that's going to fit right there. So there is a 1/4 of an inch on each side. And for the inside of the card, I have a 4x6 card panel that we'll use for stamping a further sentiment inside. For the stamps, I'm using this world map stamp from Altenew. There's 2 different ones I can use. I'm going to go with the dots because I want it to look a little bit vintage, and I feel that the little squares might be a little bit more modern. So I'm going to use the one with the dots. Also going to use the Birthdays Around the World sentiment stamp set. I think you probably see a theme here, and there is a really fun, I think it's a fun way to say happy birthday using different languages, and there's a great sentiment for the inside that I'll be using, which is no matter how you say it, I hope you enjoy your day. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And I'll be using this, I think the set is called Delectable Delights. It's all browns, and they're named after really yummy treats: vanilla cream, hazelnut, almond butter, and milk chocolate. I'll be using these for adding some vintage grunge onto the card. I'm also going to be using some clear embossing ink and some embossing powders. Let's get started. So the first step is going to be adding some grunge onto the card base and the card panels. I personally love making vintage looking design cards. I find adding grunge to be a lot of fun, actually. And it's just a fun way to add age and really make it look like it's older. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the almond butter for the card base. I'm just going to go ahead and get some ink on my blending brush, and I just want to go along the sides here just to get some darker, grungy color, make it look like it's aged along there. And it's easier to do this, obviously, when you don't have your card panel on there. You can also do is tap it down too, just to give it some further texture look and make it look old. Come along the side here. I'm definitely an old soul, and I've always been older than what I actually am, I guess. My mother used to say that. And I just have such a draw to anything vintage, and I love being able to create something that looks vintage. Okay, so for the card base, I'm also going to take my ink cube, and I'm just going to run it along the edge here and then scrape it along the edge just to help further define that and to add a little bit more to it. And if you happen to like scrape like that, even better. I actually really enjoy those stray marks like that. I even add them on purpose. And let's not forget the top, because that's an important area that could be overlooked. There we go. That's perfect. So I added the grunge onto the card base. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some onto the panels. So my grunge has been added to my card panels as well. Simply just used my blending brush and added some rubs back and forth over the front, went with the ink along the sides, did the same thing for the inside card panel. And purposely, I did go ahead and, as I was doing this, kind of lift and bend a bit, just to give it, you know, to not make it look so smooth and to give it kind of a more aged appearance. So the next step is focused on heat embossing. And so the first thing that I will have to do is to get my card ready for the heat embossing. And so I'm going to take some baking powder, and I'm just going to dip a paintbrush that I use especially for this into some baking powder. And then I'm just going to brush the cardstock. I'm doing this over to the side. Just brush it on there to act as an anti-static agent. You don't have to worry about it impacting the grunge that you just added on, because it's you can brush it off, any excess off later. So that is done. I'm now going to secure my card panel down. Move this particular magnet out of the way. That's lined up. Get rid of that pesky little bit of baking powder. Sometimes the little things can distract you. I'm now going to get my stamp, and as I had mentioned earlier, I'm going to use the one that has the circular representation of the countries on it. Perhaps you know someone, a guy in your life who's traveled a lot, and this would be a really great birthday card for that person, for sure. So where do I want my stamp? I think I want it towards the center of the image, because I do want it to look somewhat like an older map. And right about there looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that. Make sure my paper stays there. And I'll be back. Okay, I stamped my map with the clear embossing ink. And now I'm going to use this brown embossing powder called potting soil to get the map onto here. So I have it stamped. I'm going to sprinkle this all around this section. Let's see how that looks. Good. I think I just need some up here. Maybe I didn't go up high enough, I'm thinking. There we go. Just gonna knock the rest loose, and that's the beauty of having the cornstarch or an anti-static agent on there, is it just really, there's none of that stuff left over. The other nice thing is, even if there was, where this is older looking, and you're using brown, it does blend right in with the inks that we're using and would go with that color scheme. But I think I have good coverage there. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to get that image heat embossed. So I have the map embossed, and I love it. I knew that brown was going to look great against this cardstock and with the grunge. And I wanted to do the heat embossing for a couple of reasons. One, it does add a little bit of shimmer and shine, and I always like to add some shine to most of the cards I'm working on. Also, though, it adds texture, so if the person's feeling it, you know, that's raised because you have that powder that was transformed and went from the powder state to a solid state, and it adds that extra dimension. So I really liked that. So now it is time to stamp some sentiments. Okay, I have my happy birthday in French and in Spanish, Hawaiian, and Japanese, and I have them arranged in different spots on the card. And so I want to make sure that nothing is right up against the edge, because I have a fun little trick I'm going to share with you. for a vintage card, and I need a little space for that. So I like where those are positioned. They all look pretty good to me. I did put some tape down, Post-it tape, to make sure, because that end was lifting up a bit, kind of like this is down here. I'm just going to be extra careful there. But let's press this down and get our stamps on here. I'm then going to stamp the with clear embossing ink, and I'll add the embossing powder, and then I'll set it, and I'll be back to show you how it looks. Okay, so I used gold. It's a gilded, so kind of an aged gold embossing powder for those sentiments. I love it. I think it looks really great. Now, something I like to do for a vintage feel is to make the actual piece of cardstock look like it's older too, and that it's been fraying on the ends. And so, really simple. There are tools you can buy to do this, but honestly, a plastic knife, plastic butter knife. It's a nice sturdy one. It's not too flimsy, but all you have to do is take the serrated edge, rub it back and forth along your cardstock. And what that does is it adds that little bit of curling, and it just distresses the edge. And it's a look that I personally really like, since I like things to look old. You can also go back and forth like that. So just go around the card and do that. And it just adds, it's going to help add some dimension, and have it stick forward a bit away from the card panel. So you get added dimension, you get an older look, and I think it's just a lot of fun and is a nice little detail. Okay, so I finished going around. I also then took some more almond butter ink and just ran it around the edge, but I'm hoping that the camera is able to pick up and show you. It just adds that dimension and the age, and also when you're going around with the knife, you're kind of twisting and turning, and that just adds a little bit more age to the paper, to your card panel as well. I think it's a lot of fun. So the last thing we need to do is stamp the sentiment for the inside. So we'll do that next. Okay, so I have my inside sentiments arranged on my inside card panel. Simply to say happy birthday, no matter how you say it. I hope you enjoy your day. I wish I could use all of these various ways to say happy birthday, but there's not enough room on a card. So I'm going to get these stamped, and for the inside, I'm using this milk chocolate ink. It's nice, dark, rich, and will look good on there. Just getting the ink on the stamp. Hoping I can do it in one fell swoop. Let's see. Press down on that a bit with my stamping tool. Great. I like it. So now that is done, and we can get the card assembled. Okay, so I have it finished. What I did is I took the front card panel, and I added some double-sided foam adhesive behind it just to give it that extra added dimension. I really like that look. I think it's fun. What you can always do too is take your thumbs, your fingers, whichever, and just run it around that edge where you use the serrated knife, just to, because when you place it down, it kind of tends to flatten out a little bit. But you can always run your fingers along and get that to come back up. I then took 4 of these Altenew satin white sequins, and I put one into each corner. I'm usually somebody that follows the rule of 3 when it comes to embellishments like this, but I wanted to make it look like they were in each corner, kind of like, securing this old piece of paper into place. I then took some 3D glitter glue that was gold and added just a drop in the center of those to make that look like, again, it's holding that in place. On the inside, I took our stamped card panel and just adhered it with double-sided tape. This is a really fun card. I love the vintage look. I hope you do too. I'd love to hear what you think about it. So our third card for this particular assignment is now completed.